Hey guys, tonight we explore the past. Imagine you're walking barefoot under the vast, starry sky of the Australian outback, the land stretching endlessly in all directions. The cool desert air brushes past your skin, and in the distance, you hear the soft rustling of the earth. You're about to step into a world where sleep wasn't just about shutting your eyes, but about connecting deeply with the land, the stars, and the ancestors. In this world, sleep isn't a luxury, but a practice, an essential part of life that ties you to the rhythms of nature. You probably won't survive this. You'd have to get used to sleeping without the comfort of a mattress or the quiet of a modern city. No noise cancellation or blackout curtains. It was the open air, the moonlight, and the wind that rocked you to sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. For the Indigenous Australian nomads, sleep was far more than a daily routine. Their sleep habits were intricately connected to the land, guided by the natural rhythms of the environment around them. Picture this. You're in the heart of the Australian desert, the sky above filled with stars so close you could almost touch them. The coolness of the evening settles in as the desert shifts from the heat of the day to the chill of the night. It's here that you find the first clue to the nomadic sleep habits. Sleep wasn't something to be rushed through. It was a process, a part of life to be respected and savored. Historians still argue whether the Indigenous Australian nomads had a uniform sleep schedule across all the various tribes, given the vast expanse of territory they covered. But one thing remains clear: sleep was dictated not by the clock but by the land itself. The length of the night and the seasonal changes played a major role in determining when and how they rested. The rhythms of nature set the pace for sleep, with nightfall signaling rest and the break of dawn marking the end of it. This deep connection to the land was integral to their survival, and their sleep habits reflected their profound respect for the natural world around them. As the night falls across the desert, you settle into the stillness of the landscape, and you begin to understand the fundamental link between sleep and the environment. The Indigenous Australian nomad sleep habits were closely tied to the seasonal changes of the land. With each shift in the seasons, their sleeping patterns adjusted accordingly, harmonizing with nature's own rhythms. In the summer, the days were longer, and the nights, though cooler, were relatively shorter. The nomads would rest for shorter periods during these longer, warmer nights. However, in the winter, when the days were shorter and the air crisp, they could afford to sleep longer, rejuvenating after a day spent in the harsh conditions of the outback. Imagine lying down under the vast, star-filled sky, the chill of the desert air wrapping around you. The ground beneath you is hard, but the landscape feels alive, almost sacred, with the spirits of ancestors watching over you. You aren't alone, your fellow travelers are nearby, all wrapped in blankets or tucked beneath simple, woven shelters made from the materials around them. The sound of the wind whispers through the trees, and in the distance, a fire crackles softly. This, for the nomads, was not only sleep, it was a connection to the land, a deep bond to the natural cycles that governed their way of life. Historians still argue whether the nomads adhered to strict sleep patterns, or if they adjusted their rest according to necessity. Some believe that the tribal cultures had a more structured sleep schedule, with designated periods of rest and wakefulness. Others suggest that the nomads followed more fluid schedules, dictated by the needs of the day, the climate, and the hunt. What remains certain is that their sleep was deeply influenced by the natural environment, which demanded their attention and respect. When the seasons changed, so did their sleep. In summer, with the heat, the longer days meant that sleep often came later, and the nomads would rise with the sun to maximize daylight for hunting and gathering. In winter, the days were shorter, and the cold forced them to rest longer, adjusting their cycles to the cooler, quieter nights. The seasons weren't just practical markers of time, they were sacred. The nomads didn't just live in the land, they believed that the land lived within them, and their sleep was one way to honor that connection. As you lay on the ground, feeling the earth beneath you, you might sense that the connection to the land is more profound than just survival, it's spiritual. The longer rest periods in winter weren't simply for physical recovery, but were also seen as a time for spiritual renewal, a moment to reconnect with the earth and the spirits that watched over it. With the seasons guiding their rest, the Indigenous Australian nomads also embraced the power of sleeping under the stars. In the harsh environment of the outback, where resources were often scarce, sleep was a sacred ritual, and the great outdoors was their natural sanctuary. There were no cozy homes with soft beds waiting at the end of the day. Instead, the nomads would sleep in the open air, under the vast canopy of stars that stretched endlessly across the sky. This wasn't merely a matter of necessity, sleeping outside was an act of connection. It was a way to honor the land, to sleep with the earth beneath you and the sky above. Imagine yourself lying on the cool, dry earth, surrounded by the sounds of the desert at night. The air is crisp, but the stars seem almost close enough to touch. You're part of something ancient, something deeply connected to the land that has cradled generations of nomads. There is a profound stillness in the air, broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire or the distant call of a night bird. Sleep, here, isn't just about resting your body. It's about resting your spirit, aligning yourself with the rhythms of nature. The open sky isn't a sign of vulnerability, it's a source of strength. For the nomads, there was no fear of the open wilderness. Sleeping under the stars wasn't a choice of last resort but a deliberate practice, one that symbolized a deep trust in the land and in the protection it offered. The night sky, full of constellations and stories, was a constant companion. And as you settle into this peaceful night, you realize that sleep, in this context, was a means of spiritual renewal as much as it was physical rest. The sky above you wasn't just a beautiful sight, it was a living part of your experience, full of meaning and guidance. Historians still argue whether the practice of sleeping under the stars was universal among all the nomadic tribes, or whether certain regions or tribes preferred different forms of shelter. Some suggest that in more temperate areas, the nomads might have built more substantial shelters to sleep in, while in the harsher deserts, the stars served as both a guide and a protector. Regardless of the specifics, the symbolism of the night sky was a unifying element across the different nomadic cultures. It wasn't just about finding a place to sleep, it was about aligning with the Earth's natural patterns and rhythms. As you lie beneath the stars, it becomes clear that the nomads didn't just sleep, they created a sacred space for rest. Their minimalist sleeping arrangements reflected their deep connection to the land. In a world where every resource had to be carefully managed, there was little room for unnecessary comfort. The nomads didn't have the luxury of fluffy pillows or thick blankets, yet their sleep setups were uniquely suited to their lifestyle. They made use of what the environment provided, utilizing materials like leaves, grasses, and animal skins to create simple sleeping arrangements that allowed them to rest while remaining connected to the earth beneath them. Picture this: after a long day of travel, the nomads gather around a fire. The warmth from the flames flickers across their faces as they lay down on mats made from woven grasses. These aren't just places to rest, they are the tools that allow them to stay grounded, to feel at home in the land that they've walked for generations. The shelters, often built with branches and leaves, were designed to offer a bit of protection from the elements but weren't meant to keep out the natural world. The nomads believed that their closeness to the land would bring them strength and clarity, and so their sleeping arrangements were simple, just enough to keep them comfortable and sheltered while they rested. Historians still argue whether these minimalist sleep setups were entirely practical or if there was a spiritual dimension to the way they slept. Some suggest that the nomads' use of simple, natural materials reflected their deep reverence for the earth, while others believe that these humble arrangements were simply a matter of survival. Regardless, one thing is certain: these arrangements were integral to their way of life, providing not just physical rest, but a space for spiritual connection. The simplicity of their sleep setups didn't diminish their comfort or their connection to the world around them, it enhanced it. In these quiet moments, lying under the stars with only the sounds of the desert surrounding you, you can almost feel how the nomad sense of belonging to the land influenced every aspect of their lives, including their sleep. Their rest wasn't just about rejuvenation, it was a form of honoring the earth, a way to show respect for the land that had sustained them for so long. Every night, as they lay on the earth, they were reminded of the deep connection they had to the land, to the ancestors, and to the dreams that would guide them through the night. As the desert night wraps around you, you notice that sleep for the Indigenous Australian nomads wasn't merely a time to shut down. It was an integral part of their spiritual lives. For them, rest wasn't just about recovery from the day's journey, it was about the power of dreams. Dreaming was seen as a sacred experience, one that allowed the nomads to connect with their ancestors, with the spirit world, and with the dream time. This mystical dimension of sleep was central to their culture, and their dreams were believed to offer guidance, insight, and connection to the divine. Imagine, as you drift off to sleep under the blanket of stars, that you're not just resting your body. In this sacred time, your soul journeys into dreamtime, a realm where the boundaries between the living and the spirits blur. It's here that the stories of ancestors are told, lessons are learned, and spiritual connections are made. The nomads didn't just sleep to recuperate, they slept to receive wisdom and strength from the spirits that walked with them. Dreams were regarded as messages from the beyond, guiding their decisions, protecting their people, and ensuring the survival of their traditions. Historians still argue whether dreamtime dreams were universally viewed as the most sacred form of communication across all Indigenous Australian tribes. Some argue that not all tribes placed the same emphasis on dreams, while others contend that dreamtime was a common thread, influencing many aspects of daily life. Regardless of the differences in interpretation, it is undeniable that dreams played a crucial role in shaping the worldview of Indigenous Australian cultures. They weren't just random brain activity but were seen as spiritual messages, guiding the community in ways that the waking world could not. As the night settles in and you begin to drift deeper into sleep, you realize that this practice of connecting to the dreamtime is far from passive. The nomads would often share their dreams with each other upon waking, and these shared dreams were woven into their cultural fabric. They might inform hunting strategies, guide them to new water sources, or offer solutions to communal issues. In a way, sleep for the nomads wasn't just individual, it was communal. The collective dreaming connected them all to the land, to each other, and to the wisdom of those who came before. This connection to the spirit world through sleep wasn't something that could be rushed. The nomads didn't sleep for mere convenience or to meet some predetermined schedule. They slept when the body and the land called for rest, allowing their minds to open to the guidance that came from the dreamtime. In this space, sleep was both a personal retreat and a collective journey, one that tied each nomad to the community, the earth, and the eternal spirit of the land they walked. The significance of dreams in the lives of the Indigenous Australian nomads wasn't merely confined to spiritual messages. Their sleep habits were woven with rituals designed to prepare for and enhance the dreams they sought. As night fell, the nomads would gather around the fire, share stories, and perform rituals to foster positive, insightful dreams. These rituals were believed to encourage ancestral spirits to enter their dreams and guide them with wisdom. The act of storytelling was especially important before sleep, as the narratives passed down through generations kept the ancestral knowledge alive and connected the dreamer to the past. Imagine sitting by the fire as the flickering flames cast shadows on the surrounding faces. The stories shared around the fire weren't just entertainment, they were spiritual teachings. These stories often dealt with the dreamtime, ancestors, animals, and the elements of nature. Each tale wasn't just for amusement, it was a ritual, preparing the mind to enter a state of awareness where the spirit world could be accessed. As the stories wound down and the firelight dimmed, the nomads would settle into their sleeping arrangements, the dreams of the evening already shaped by the energy of the stories they'd heard. Historians still argue whether storytelling and ritual before sleep were universal practices or if they varied significantly among different tribes. Some tribes might have emphasized oral tradition more heavily, while others might have focused more on physical rituals or offerings to ensure peaceful, insightful dreams. Regardless, the connection between sleep and story is undeniable. Storytelling wasn't just about recounting history, it was about preparing the mind and spirit for rest, creating a mental and emotional space for communication with the ancestors. The act of telling stories before sleep also served as a bonding experience for the community. Unlike the solitary sleep habits common in modern times, the nomads slept in close proximity, often with the communal fire acting as the center of their evening. Sleep wasn't just an individual experience, it was deeply social. As the night deepened and the stories gave way to quiet murmurs, the tribe settled into its slumber, each person connected by the shared spiritual practices and the sense of safety in numbers. As you lay beneath the stars, you realize that sleep for the nomads was far from a passive experience. It was a time of active engagement with the land, the ancestors, and the spirit world. The sleep rituals, the stories, and the communal practices all played a role in shaping the dreams of the night, ensuring that rest wasn't just about physical renewal but spiritual connection. It was through these collective practices that the tribe's identity was maintained, and the wisdom of generations was passed down, one dream at a time. As the night deepens and the fire crackles softly in the distance, it becomes apparent that sleep wasn't just about the personal journey of the individual, it was deeply communal. The nomads didn't sleep in the solitary, isolated manner that many of us are accustomed to today. Instead, sleep was shared. People would often sleep together in groups, side by side, each person connected to the others, physically and spiritually. This closeness wasn't merely a matter of necessity, it had a deeper meaning, rooted in the importance of community, safety, and spiritual protection. Imagine lying in the circle of your fellow travelers, the warmth of their bodies near you offering comfort against the chill of the night. You feel safe, not just because of the physical proximity but because you are part of something larger, something older. The presence of others wasn't just for warmth but for spiritual protection as well. The nomads believed that the collective energy of the group helped ward off bad dreams, negative spirits, and any threats that might loom during the night. The strength of the community was believed to carry into their dreams, keeping them safe and spiritually nourished. Historians still argue whether the communal aspect of sleep was truly as widespread as some believe, or if it was specific to certain tribes or regions. While many tribes shared this close-knit approach to sleeping arrangements, others might have preferred more individual spaces within the group for rest. However, what's clear is that the act of sleeping together wasn't just for practical reasons. It was a cultural practice that connected the group, reinforcing bonds and ensuring that everyone felt protected, not just physically, but spiritually as well. This communal sleep was also tied to the practice of night watches. In some tribes, a member of the group would take turns staying awake to watch for dangers, ensuring that the others could rest undisturbed. While some historians suggest that these night watches were a standard practice, others argue that the nomads, trusting the land and their connection to the spirits, didn't need to be as vigilant as other cultures. Regardless, the practice of sharing sleep in a group, whether with a watch or not, created a sense of collective security and reinforced the importance of looking out for one another. The community was everything, even in the quiet hours of the night. This sense of unity in sleep is something that modern society has largely lost. Today, many of us sleep alone or in separate rooms, with our sleep being an isolated experience, almost disconnected from the world around us. The nomads, however, believed that their dreams and rest were interconnected with the group, with the land, and with the universe itself. Sleep wasn't just a time to rest for them, it was a time for spiritual rejuvenation, a time when the energy of the group and the wisdom of the ancestors could shape their dreams. It was an experience that linked them to the earth beneath them and the stars above them, keeping them grounded, connected, and safe. As you lie in the soft, cool desert air, feeling the weight of the night settle over you, you begin to realize that sleep for the Indigenous Australian nomads wasn't just about rest, it was about embracing the natural rhythms of life and aligning yourself with the universe. The role of fire and moonlight was particularly significant in shaping the sleep environment. The flickering light of the fire, dancing and shifting, created a calming atmosphere, helping to signal the end of the day's work and the beginning of the night's rest. This firelight wasn't just for warmth or light, it also served as a spiritual marker, a transition from the active world into the stillness of sleep. Imagine the glow of the fire as it illuminates the faces of the people gathered around it, casting long shadows across the earth. The fire wasn't just a practical tool for warmth and cooking, it was a companion in the nomadic lifestyle. The warmth of the flames and the soft hum of the crackling embers provided a sense of comfort and security, drawing people together. The ritual of sitting around the fire before sleep was an essential part of the communal aspect of rest. It was a time to exchange stories, reflect on the day, and prepare mentally and spiritually for the rest that lay ahead. The fire's light provided both physical and emotional comfort, making it easier for the nomads to transition into sleep. Moonlight also played a vital role in the nomadic sleep experience. The moon, with its bright, calming glow, was considered a spiritual guide, illuminating the path both during the day and night. The nomads didn't rely on artificial lights to guide them, they used the moon and the stars as their navigational tools. At night, the moon's light helped set the stage for sleep, casting a gentle, natural glow that invited rest. The relationship with the moon wasn't just practical, it was deeply symbolic. The cycles of the moon, from its waxing to its waning, were seen as mirrors of life's natural cycles, influencing everything from hunting patterns to the sleep habits of the nomads. Historians still argue about the specific role of moonlight and firelight in shaping indigenous sleep practices. Some suggest that the firelight had more of a social and communal function, while others believe it played a more ritualistic role in the spiritual practices before sleep. Likewise, the moonlight's significance is debated, whether it was purely practical, used to navigate, or whether it had a deeper spiritual meaning, tying the nomad sleep patterns to the cycles of nature. What is undeniable, however, is that both firelight and moonlight played a crucial role in the daily rhythms of the nomadic lifestyle, marking the transition from wakefulness to rest and shaping the spiritual connection to the night. These natural lights didn't just provide comfort or direction, they helped form the framework for sleep itself. Without the bright glare of modern lights, the nomads were able to rest in a way that was more attuned to the natural world, allowing their bodies and spirits to sync with the rhythms of the earth. The firelight and moonlight were part of a larger, deeper connection to the land, reminding the nomads that sleep was not merely a time for rest, it was an act of harmony with the universe. As the fire crackles softly, the moon casting its serene light over the desert, you might begin to realize that the act of sleep for the Indigenous Australian nomads wasn't simply about closing their eyes and drifting off, it was part of a larger, sacred rhythm. Their connection to the land, the stars, and the natural world was so deeply integrated into every aspect of life, including rest, that sleep itself became an extension of this spiritual relationship. The idea of rest, of stepping into a peaceful, quiet space, wasn't a break from daily life, it was an essential part of maintaining the balance between themselves, the earth, and the spirit world. But, sleep wasn't always a peaceful, uninterrupted experience. For the nomads, the balance of rest was precarious, and sometimes, the act of sleep involved a deeper spiritual preparation to ensure safety and peace during the night. Some tribes practiced rituals before sleep to protect themselves from negative spirits or bad dreams. While the act of sleeping under the stars or by the fire offered protection and comfort, it was also believed that certain forces, both known and unknown, could disturb their rest. To prevent this, the nomads would perform specific rituals, offering prayers, smudging with sacred smoke, or placing protective objects nearby. This wasn't just superstition, it was about creating a sacred space in which they could fully embrace rest without the fear of spiritual disturbances. Imagine sitting around the fire with the others, the soft hum of the wind mixing with the crackling of the embers. You'd share stories, speak of the ancestors, and perhaps engage in one of these rituals before sleep. A piece of sacred wood or a stone might be passed around, or you might smudge yourself with sacred herbs to purify the energy around you. These small rituals help to ease any worries or fears, preparing the mind for the sacred experience of sleep, ensuring that the dreams to come would be filled with wisdom and guidance, not disturbance. Historians still argue whether these pre-sleep rituals were common across all tribes or specific to certain groups. Some believe these practices were widespread, used by many different nomadic tribes, while others suggest they were more localized, with only specific tribes practicing these protective rituals before rest. Regardless of the differences, the notion that sleep was an active, intentional act, one that required spiritual preparation, was central to the nomadic lifestyle. It was a reminder that rest was not just about recuperating the body, but also the spirit. The importance of these rituals speaks to the deep respect the nomads had for sleep. It wasn't a mundane, unimportant task, but a vital spiritual practice. It was a way to honor the ancestors, to align with the earth's natural rhythms, and to create a space where the spirit could rest and rejuvenate as much as the body. This kind of intentional rest, where the mind and spirit are equally cared for, is something that modern society has largely forgotten, replaced by hurried, disconnected sleep patterns. As the night progresses and the firelight flickers one last time before you drift off, you realize that, for the nomads, sleep wasn't just an individual experience. It was a deeply communal event, intertwined with their collective existence. The act of sleep was not just about the personal act of resting, it was about shared moments of peace and connection. The nomads often slept close to one another, huddled together for warmth, safety, and community. This closeness was more than just a physical necessity, it was a cultural practice, one that reinforced the bonds between tribe members. In a time when survival depended on the strength of the group, sleeping together was a practice that helped foster solidarity and trust. Imagine, as you settle into your own place around the fire, feeling the warmth and comfort of the people around you. This wasn't just for physical comfort, it was an emotional and spiritual act, one that reassured everyone that they were part of something larger. The shared experience of sleep became a way to reinforce the unity of the tribe, making sure that no one felt isolated or disconnected, even in the stillness of the night. The bond formed during these shared moments of rest was profound. In their community, sleep wasn't just an individual retreat from the world, it was a collective act of renewal. Whether you were sleeping beneath the stars or in a shelter made from branches, your body rested in the presence of others, your sleep intertwined with theirs. It was a constant reminder that, in the harshness of the land, the tribe was everything. The support and protection of the group were felt even in the deepest moments of sleep. Historians still argue whether this communal sleeping practice was common across all Indigenous Australian groups, or if it was more specific to certain tribes or regions. While it is clear that the nomads valued communal living, the actual practice of sleeping together varied. Some tribes may have used more individualistic forms of rest, while others placed a higher emphasis on sharing sleep in close quarters. Regardless, the essence of communal sleep was tied to a deeper understanding that rest was not merely about recuperation. It was about spiritual and social renewal, a reaffirmation of the tribe's connection to one another and to the land they inhabited. This sense of shared rest, where sleep was as much about the tribe as it was about the individual, was a practice that allowed the nomads to move through the world with a deep sense of interdependence. They understood that their survival depended on their unity, not just during the day, but also in the quiet, vulnerable hours of the night. In modern society, where we often retreat into our private spaces for sleep, it's easy to forget how profound and communal the act of rest once was. As the night stretches on and the wind softly stirs the sand around you, you begin to grasp that sleep for the Indigenous Australian nomads wasn't just an act of physical rest. It was a harmonious interaction between body, spirit, and the environment. The natural world, from the soft rustling of the wind to the steady, rhythmic pulse of the earth beneath them, was their constant companion. They weren't separated from the world while they slept, they were in tune with it. Every breath, every movement, was aligned with the natural cycles, and this connection was vital to their survival and spiritual well-being. One of the key aspects of this deep alignment was their understanding of the land's cycles, which didn't just govern their waking hours, but also their sleep. The indigenous nomads didn't just follow the seasons, they followed the subtle shifts in the environment. They observed the changing sounds of the landscape, the calls of nocturnal creatures, the movement of the winds, the temperature drops at night, and the shift in the air as the earth settled into its nighttime rhythm. These natural markers were cues for when to rest, when to wake, and when to be alert. Sleep wasn't merely a period of unconsciousness, it was a part of the day's ongoing cycle, just as connected to the rhythm of nature as their waking hours. Imagine, lying on the earth with the sounds of the desert echoing around you, that the air you breathe is filled with the quiet sounds of the world, sounds that speak to you in ways we might never understand today. The crackling of the fire, the occasional rustle of a creature nearby, the soft whistling of the wind, they are all part of the music of the earth, guiding you to sleep. For the nomads, these sounds were not distractions, but invitations to rest in harmony with nature. Historians still argue whether the nomads' sleep was purely dictated by these natural rhythms, or whether their practices were influenced by other factors such as cultural taboos or the roles of specific tribe members. Some suggest that the environment played a more passive role, with the nomads simply adapting to whatever circumstances they encountered, while others believe that the land's rhythms were actively revered and incorporated into every aspect of their lives, including sleep. What's clear, however, is that the Indigenous Australian nomads understood that their relationship with the land wasn't just about survival, it was about a deep, spiritual connection that extended into the quiet hours of the night. This connection to the land wasn't just about survival in a harsh environment, it was about thriving within the rhythms of nature. Sleep, for them, wasn't a retreat from the world but a deeper connection to it, a vital, integrated part of the spiritual and physical experience. It's easy to forget that in our modern world, where we often block out the natural world with artificial lights and noise, the sleep of the nomads was a direct and uninterrupted experience with the earth, a peaceful coexistence between body, spirit, and the land. As the night unfolds and the sounds of the desert continue to soothe you into deeper rest, it becomes clear that for the Indigenous Australian nomads, sleep wasn't simply an individual pursuit. It was deeply connected to the broader spiritual understanding of the world, particularly through the concept of dream time. For them, sleep and dreams weren't just necessary breaks from the waking world, they were portals to the spiritual realm, a realm where the ancestors lived, where the laws of nature and creation were written, and where important knowledge and guidance were passed down. Dreamtime wasn't a myth, it was a living, breathing reality that informed every part of their existence, including their sleep. Imagine, as you slip into sleep, that you are entering the dreamtime, a world where the boundaries between the living and the spirits blur. It's not an escape from reality, but a deeper plunge into it, where your dreams offer both wisdom and warnings. The nomads didn't sleep to unwind the way we might today. They slept to listen, to connect with the ancestors, to understand the movements of the land and the spirits that roamed it. Dreamtime, for the nomads, was an extension of life itself, a place where the past, present, and future were intertwined. This wasn't just a cultural belief, it was the fabric of their entire worldview. Historians still debate whether dreamtime was universally experienced in the same way across all Indigenous Australian cultures. Some scholars suggest that dreamtime had different meanings or was interpreted differently depending on the tribe, region, or language group. Others argue that dreamtime was a common thread, understood in some form by most groups, connecting all Indigenous Australians through a shared cultural and spiritual practice. Regardless of the variations in belief, what is clear is that dreamtime profoundly influenced the way these nomads approached sleep. It wasn't just a time to rest their bodies, it was a time to receive guidance from the spirits and to walk among the ancestors. Dreams were seen as sacred messages, and the nomads knew that the way they slept directly affected the kind of dreams they had. Their rituals, the stories they told, and the spiritual practices they engaged in before sleep were all meant to prepare the mind and spirit for the journey into dreamtime. The stories told around the fire, the spiritual rituals, and the smudging with sacred smoke weren't just meant to calm the body, they were setting the stage for a spiritually enriching experience during sleep. This sacred preparation ensured that the dreams the nomads experienced would be clear, powerful, and full of meaning, providing them with the wisdom necessary to navigate the waking world. In the morning, when the sun rises over the horizon, the dreams of the night would be shared with the tribe. These dreams weren't seen as private or individual, they were communal experiences. The wisdom from dreamtime wasn't just for the dreamer, it was for the entire group. By sharing their dreams, the nomads ensured that the lessons from the spirit world were accessible to all, reinforcing the spiritual ties that bound the community together. Through sleep and dreams, the nomads maintained their connection to the land, the ancestors, and each other, creating a deep, unbroken line of spiritual continuity. As the new day's first light begins to break across the horizon, it's important to recognize how the nomads' relationship to sleep and dreams was far more than just a way to pass time. Sleep wasn't a mere interruption of their waking lives, it was a vital part of their spiritual practice, providing a gateway to deeper understanding, connection, and wisdom. The nomadic way of life, with its constant movement, reliance on the land, and dependence on ancestral guidance, required that sleep be more than a physical necessity. It was intertwined with everything they did, from hunting to storytelling to spiritual rituals. Their sleep patterns weren't dictated by the clock or modern concerns, they were dictated by the seasons, the environment, and the spiritual beliefs that shaped their entire way of being. Imagine, then, waking up from a dream that has left you with a deep sense of connection and clarity. As the light of the new day shines down, you gather with the others, sharing the dreams of the night, learning from one another's experiences. This wasn't just a time to discuss what happened in the dream, it was a time to weave the dreams into the fabric of daily life. The wisdom of the dream time wasn't something that could be ignored or dismissed. It was a part of the collective experience, a way to understand the challenges of the day, interpret signs from the land, and find direction for the future. Dreams were sacred, and the sleep that led to them was just as important as the work done in the daylight. Historians still argue whether the practice of dream sharing and interpreting dreams was as widespread as some believe. Some suggest that only certain tribes or regions placed such significance on shared dreams, while others maintain that the practice was a core aspect of nomadic life. What is clear, however, is that the connection between sleep, dreams, and community was profound. It wasn't just about sleeping, it was about entering into a sacred state where the spirit could journey, learn, and bring back messages for the good of the entire group. These shared dreams provided a way to unite the tribe, offering spiritual guidance and wisdom that transcended individual experiences. In this way, sleep was never a solitary event for the nomads. It was always a communal act, one that tied the group together not just physically, but spiritually. The rituals around sleep, the stories told, and the dreams shared created a bond that was unbreakable. It was this deep connection to each other, the land, and the spirits that ensured the survival of the nomadic way of life. Sleep wasn't just about resting to face the day ahead, it was about connecting with the very fabric of existence, finding meaning in the spiritual and physical world, and maintaining the balance between them. For the modern world, where sleep is often interrupted by technology, stress, and artificial light, it's easy to forget how deeply sleep can be connected to the world around us. The nomads, however, had a profound understanding that rest wasn't just a break from the grind. It was a time to connect, to the land, to the spirits, and to the community. Their way of sleeping was a practice rooted in mindfulness, respect, and reverence for the natural world that has been lost in much of today's fast-paced life. Their sleep habits were a testament to how deeply our environment, our relationships, and our spiritual beliefs shape our daily lives, especially the most restful parts of them. As you drift through this contemplation of the nomadic sleep experience, it's impossible to ignore the contrast with modern lifestyles. The Indigenous Australian nomads were in constant harmony with their environment, so much so that their sleep was a continuation of their relationship with the earth. The rhythms of nature guided their sleep, their dreams, and even their waking lives. Today, however, modern society is marked by artificial structures and technologies that disrupt the natural cycles we evolved to follow. Sleep, which once held deep spiritual and communal significance, has become increasingly fragmented and disconnected from the natural world. The nomads had no need for sleep tracking devices or alarm clocks, they had an innate connection to the land that told them when to rest, when to wake, and when to be alert. Imagine what it would be like to live without the distractions of modern life, without the buzzing of notifications or the artificial light that keeps us awake at night. Instead, your day would be guided by the rising sun, the changing seasons, and the natural cues from the land. Sleep, for the nomads, wasn't something to be fixed or optimized, it was a sacred part of the life cycle, a necessary moment of rest in a constantly shifting world. This sense of natural flow, where every part of life is connected, is something many of us have lost in our modern, disconnected routines. Historians still debate whether the nomads' deep connection to the land and sleep patterns could be replicated today. Some suggest that our modern lifestyle, with its focus on technology and urbanization, has fundamentally changed the way we approach sleep. Others argue that by reconnecting with nature and embracing more mindful, rhythmic sleep patterns, we could improve our quality of rest and our connection to the environment. Regardless, there's no denying that the Indigenous Australian nomads had an understanding of sleep that was rooted in a profound connection to the natural world. Their sleep was part of a greater whole, something that involved not just the individual but the entire tribe, the land, and the spirits. Today, many are turning to practices like mindfulness and nature immersion to restore a sense of balance in their lives. These practices, while modern in form, draw inspiration from ancient ways of living. The nomad's lifestyle may be gone, but the wisdom they imparted about sleep, how it should be a time for spiritual renewal, for connecting to the earth, for aligning with natural rhythms, still holds relevance today. We can learn from their example, finding ways to rest that honor the cycles of nature, the wisdom of our ancestors, and our need for both physical and spiritual rejuvenation. The indigenous nomads knew something that many modern cultures have forgotten, that sleep isn't just about turning off the mind and body for a few hours. It's about harmonizing with the world around us, embracing the quiet moments where we can connect with the spiritual forces of the earth. Sleep, for the nomads, was an act of reverence, an acknowledgement that rest is just as sacred as work, and that balance must be maintained between the two. As the firelight fades and the stars shine brighter overhead, you begin to understand that for the Indigenous Australian nomads, sleep wasn't a mere physical necessity, it was a vital, spiritual experience, one that bridged the gap between the earthly and the divine. The night was not an interruption of life but a continuation of it, a time when the connection to the land, the ancestors, and the spirits was strengthened. Sleep was an act of trust, a surrender to the rhythms of nature, where the body could rest, and the spirit could wander into the dreamtime to seek wisdom and guidance. In many ways, their sleep practices were a reflection of their entire way of life, a life in harmony with the earth, where every action was in balance with nature's cycles. Whether they were gathering food, telling stories around the fire, or sleeping beneath the stars, the nomads saw themselves as part of an interconnected whole, deeply tied to the land and to each other. There was no separation between waking life and sleep, both were deeply spiritual, intertwined with the ancestors' teachings and the land's whispers. Today, as you think about your own sleep, it's easy to see how disconnected we've become from the natural rhythms that the nomads lived by. Our modern sleep habits are often disrupted by artificial lights, electronics, and stress. We've traded in the natural cycles for a more rigid, fragmented approach to rest, one that doesn't always allow for the deep spiritual renewal that the nomads experienced. The rituals, the communal sleeping arrangements, the connection to the land, all of these are practices that seem so distant now, lost in the hustle and bustle of modern life. However, the lessons from the nomad sleep practices are still relevant today. There's a growing movement towards mindfulness and natural sleep cycles, encouraging people to reconnect with nature, reduce artificial light exposure, and restore balance to their sleep routines. Perhaps, by looking to the past, we can begin to reclaim some of the lost wisdom about sleep, that it is not just a physical process but a spiritual one, a time for rejuvenation on all levels. We can learn to create a sleep environment that promotes peace, that connects us to the earth, and that honors the ancient rhythms of the world around us. The nomad's connection to sleep was more than just a way of resting. It was a sacred act, one that recognized the importance of the land, the community, and the spirits in every aspect of life. Their sleep habits were a reminder that rest isn't just about shutting off for a few hours, it's about aligning with the universe, listening to the wisdom of the earth, and finding balance in a world that is constantly shifting. As you close your eyes and drift into sleep tonight, remember the nomads, lying beneath the stars, listening to the whispers of the land, and letting their dreams guide them forward.